Story 1. I had to be medically detoxed 25 times over 2 years after 17 years of physical dependency. 4 weeks ago today, I experienced full-blown delirium tremens and psychosis and thought I was going to die alone in a dark room in rehab. Today, I am living in a sober house and I have just returned from my 10th Alcoholics Anonymous meeting in 10 days. Recovery is a gift. Story 2. I drank a bottle of vodka a day for 3 years. I took ketamine intramuscularly when I was not drinking and did not care about life after my wife tragically died. I drank nearly half a gallon in 1 hour, drove down a country road, and crashed my car into a tree. My blood alcohol concentration was 0.41 according to court and medical documents. The last thing I did to avoid living was use the glass from my window to cut off my right arm. I was airlifted to a major hospital, and many people saved my life while I was in a coma for weeks. I woke up from the coma and an exceptional surgeon reattached my arm. It works perfectly now, except for a scar that goes all the way around. Before multiple surgeries, you could only see bone. I went to 2 rehabilitation programs and got sober 3 years ago. I have been sober ever since and volunteer at the rehabilitation center that helped me in my darkest hour. Do not lose hope. Someone is always ready to step up, as long as you are willing to ask for help. If you are sober, stay sober. If you want sobriety, go get it. It is the best thing I ever did. Story 3. I had a child on the way. I looked in the mirror and told myself my child would not have a father who is an addict. Both of my parents are addicts, so I had to break the cycle. Story 4. I was told by a wise, trusted person that, over time, I would have less anxiety and my mood would improve. I have been sober from alcohol for 13.5 years. I am not depressed, and my anxiety has been much less intense for a long time. If I had kept drinking, there would have been no hope for a good life. Story 5. My boyfriend at the time went to detox. I was not that drunk, but I drank more than I should have. I figured that if he was sober, I would be too. We are not together at the moment, but I am still not drinking. Story 6. Eventually my body started breaking down because of it. I now have severe gastroesophageal reflux disease and have to sleep on an incline or I wake up nauseous. It was a lot of fun having a drink after work every day in my 20s. I miss it. Story 7. My tolerance became so high that it simply was not fun anymore. If drinking 10 shots only gives you 90 minutes of feeling good, followed by 16 hours of feeling awful, it is not worth it. Back when 3 beers gave more than 2 hours of euphoria, that was a different story. Story 8. I was homeless and arrested for trespassing after sleeping in a vacant house. I spent a few days in jail before I was released on my own recognizance. Within an hour I was high again, and I realized that if I did not get help, my felonies could put me in prison. I admitted myself to a treatment program, and thankfully it worked. Otherwise, I would probably be dead. Story 9. Hangovers became brutal and included 3-day migraines, even after only a minimal amount of alcohol. Story 10. I thought getting a wife and a child would help keep me sober. When that fell apart and I saw how terrible I had been, the guilt and shame made me want to change. I am 1 year and 2 months sober. Story 11. What got me off caffeine was that I was consuming at least 1,000 milligrams daily. If I did not have that much, I would get mind-numbing headaches, blurry vision, and a deep, cold sensation that made me shake violently. Story 12. I had a dream that I was awake when death walked into the room, robed and carrying a scythe. Death said I would die if I kept it up. I was young and starting to feel terrible, but it was not like my liver was swollen or anything. I had 1 beer the next day and then went to Alcoholics Anonymous. It turns out I have a genetic disorder that makes it impossible for me to handle alcohol. I would not be in a good place if I had not stopped when I did. 30 years later, I am still suffering the effects of that damage. Story 13. I grew tired of always feeling unwell. It reached the point where each day felt like a chore rather than something enjoyable. Story 14. It was mainly for my daughters who were 15 and 9, and because I was tired of feeling awful every day. On the morning of October 19, 1990, I sat up in bed and said I am sick of this, and that was it. Fortunately, The urge lifted and has not returned. Story 15. I was at the cardiologist's office for a visit. A nurse was staring down intently at the doctor's clipboard, asking me questions and scribbling down my responses. The doctor asked, "How much do you drink?" I said, "About a fifth to a handle a night." He dropped his clipboard and looked up as if into my soul. "That's binge drinking," he said. I replied that I did not think it was because I assumed binge drinking meant I stopped and took breaks now and then. He reiterated his point, and it was clear he was genuinely concerned about my alcohol intake. I have since given it up cold turkey. Sadly, my partner was also a heavy drinker and still is. It has caused a divide between us. I enjoyed it and I loved my drinking buddy, but I was not going to lose my life over it. Story 16. I loved the fine quality gin. Thursday, I drank with the office crowd, which rolled into Friday night. On Saturday, I drank from mid-afternoon to late evening with my wife and friends. On Sunday, I recovered and relaxed with a gin martini. On vacation, we brought our own bottles and enjoyed cocktails on the balcony overlooking a nice view. I got tired of being tired. We have been doing this for 3 years. It is the best decision we ever made. Story 17. A sudden fear of dying set in. It turned my entire life and liver around on a random day in 2022. Story 18. Listening to my body when it tells me it doesn't like something. Story 19. Sounds cliché, but I became sick and tired of being sick and tired. I realized I am the only one in control of myself and could not justify why I was slowly killing myself. I am a good person, no matter what happened to me in the past, and I deserve better than waking up miserable every day. I stayed clean for a year and thought one night would not hurt. It hurt. I woke up sick and embarrassed, feeling worried, guilty, regretful, and ashamed. I wasted the day going back and forth to the bathroom. It was miserable and not worth it at all. Never again. Story 20. I got too high once to the point of psychosis, and there was no way I could hide it from my partner when they came home as I normally would. I confessed everything and began my sobriety journey. 3.5 years meth-free. Story 21. My parents were addicts. Both died from addiction. I realized my child would face the same during the coronavirus disease 2019 pandemic when he was 1 year old, so I decided to stop. Almost 5 years later, I am still sober. Story 22. I hit rock bottom and did the most foolish thing of my life. Embarrassing. 65 days sober. Story 23. I would say the lack of alcohol. Sadly, I still do not lack alcohol. Story 24. I went to the emergency room after falling in my apartment hallway. I was worried I would asphyxiate that night if I had just gone into my apartment and slept it off. I was billed for the emergency room visit and the ambulance ride, but it was worth it to find the peace I have now. Story 25. I got bored with alcohol and drugs and gradually stopped using them. Story 26. My husband said he would not stay with me if I kept up my antics. I started antidepressants and gabapentin for anxiety 4.5 years ago. I am also vain and thought about the negative effects of drugs, alcohol, and cigarettes on my appearance. Story 27. I hit rock bottom, lost almost everything, and became someone I swore I would never become. Story 28. Being dope sick sucks. I buried a lot of friends and peers. Relapse taught me I was on the right path. The few days of being high took a couple of weeks for me to return to the baseline I had before. Chasing a high felt exhausting. Chasing sobriety felt less exhausting. More than a decade later, I know I made the right choice. Story 29. I did not want to be a hypocrite after telling my husband I would not stick around if he continued to drink, so I stopped when he stopped. Story 30. My wife became ill and was unable to drink or take her medications. I gave up drinking alcohol to support her. Story 31. My stepdaughter almost died from alcohol abuse, and I could not drink after that. Story 32. I almost died. I woke up intubated in the intensive care unit, and it was terrifying. That was 8.5 years ago. I have been clean from heroin ever since. Story 33. Too much drama and health risks. I quit over 11 years ago and feel great. Story 34. I eventually realized I was ruining my life by being high all the time, and sobriety was the only option to accomplish my goals. It took 6 months for sobriety to really settle in as the new normal, but now, after more than 8.5 years, I would not give it up for anything. Story 35. I got bored with drinking and often forgot to drink. Then I was diagnosed with diabetes and cut out all the unhealthy things I was putting into my body, so giving up alcohol was easy. Story 36. My husband went to treatment, and I want to support him. He has been sober for 2.5 years. Story 37. When I drank, I would switch to a really nasty altar. One day my roommate told me I would hate myself for something I had said to him, but he would not tell me what it was. I quit that day. I have not seen that altar since. Story 38. I was always driving while intoxicated. I couldn't make the basic decision not to get behind the wheel, and I was putting many other people in danger. I just didn't care. I never got caught, but I knew if I kept it up I would either kill someone else or myself. Story 39. I realized that if I did not stop, my children would grow up to be alcoholics like me, and I would probably lose a great job. No matter how much I drank, the relief never lasted. Story 40. I got properly drunk twice. Both times, the next morning was miserable. I told myself never again. I never used other drugs because I was an athlete growing up, so I never developed a desire for them. Story 41. I went to therapy and confronted my unresolved trauma. I was also using too much cocaine. Story 42. The seizure made me take a hard look at my lifestyle and make adjustments. Story 43. I'm really sorry you're feeling this way. Are you safe right now? If you are in immediate danger, please call your local emergency number. If you are in the United States, call or text 988. United Kingdom and Ireland, Samaritans 116 123. Australia, Lifeline 13 11 14. Canada, 988. If you are elsewhere, please contact local emergency services or find a helpline at https://www.opencounseling.com suicidio trinis. I had no desire to live the way I was anymore. It was either that or suicide. Story 44. I got tired of being overweight, not sleeping, and being broke. I linked it all back to my cravings for alcohol. It was an epiphany. I started working out, took supplements to balance blood sugar fluctuations, and worked through the drive to drink. I will probably drink again at some point, but right now I am feeling great and have overcome the craving. Story 45. It reached the point where I had alcoholic fatty liver disease and tests were trending toward cirrhosis. I did not want to die in 10 years, so I quit drinking. I am not religious, but I prayed to God for a second chance. That was only a month ago. I am on the straight and narrow, and my health is improving. It was definitely scary at 33 when a doctor told me he thought I might have cirrhosis. Fortunately, it was not cirrhosis, but it was enough to make me stop drinking. The hospital was amazing. They tested everything from A to Z. Story 46. I met a lovely woman who became a different person when she drank. Scared me, so I quit. Story 47. I had back surgery, and knowing alcohol is terrible for healing, I quit the day before the operation. It has been 6 months, and I have never felt better. I have lost weight, my inflammation has decreased, and my mental health has improved. I will never drink again. Story 48. God showed me just how deadly alcohol is and knew just what to do. I might have avascular necrosis in my hips, but in the early stages it may be reversed. I am eating as clean as I can and have given up alcohol. Hopefully, with God's grace, I can still recover to my former self. Sin has consequences, people. Story 49. I met my future wife the day I had been clean for a month, and I never looked back. Story 50. Honestly, after having had a bit too much to drink, I woke up and saw myself in the mirror, thinking about what the people whom I lost, or the few genuine ones I still have, would think of me if they knew everything. I have been sober for 4 years now, though I still sometimes drink alcohol. Story 51. I accidentally snorted the wrong bag of drugs. I stayed awake for 3 days in miserable pain and am now scared to do any more. Story 52. A couples counselor reprimanded me, saying the marriage cannot be repaired without rehabilitation or separation. Story 53. I am working on it, but I realize that dying that way is not what I want. There are a few less painful alternatives. I am not a teetotaler and still occasionally binge drink, but it is getting better. Each time I overdo it, it reminds me I do not want that outcome. I overdo it less these days. Story 54. On the verge of failing out of college, my mental health was in the gutter and I was out of options. Story 55. Fear of insanity. My great-grandfather, who was an alcoholic, hanged himself, and when I found out, I panicked. That was my trigger. Never a fear of death, but a fear of going insane. Story 56. My mother died of cancer. I often say her death saved my life. Story 57. A girl I was dating was going to leave me. That terrified me. I went to treatment, got sober, and have stayed sober. This February 4th is 25 years of continuous sobriety. The girl left me anyway. She was not considerate in how she did it, but I will always be grateful to her. The key is bottoming out. Everyone has a different breaking point. I was so broken and depressed, trapped in the cycle, and the thought of being absolutely alone terrified me, so quitting was oddly easy. I quit to keep her in my life. I had early sobriety issues. It was very hard at times, but her threatening to leave unless I quit was the final straw. Story 58. I can't access external links. Please paste the text you want processed. I will then correct spelling, expand all acronyms to their full forms, remove meaningless repetition, fix punctuation, remove special characters and links, and output only the clean text formatted for Azure Text-to-Speech. If you have a preference for how acronyms are expanded, full phrase only, or full phrase followed by the acronym in parentheses, tell me. Otherwise, I will replace each acronym with its full phrase only. Story 59. I watched alcohol ruin people's lives, so I quit drinking to show them how easy it is. I am still sober and everyone else is still drinking. Their lives are getting worse. Story 60. Alcohol doesn't mix well with my kind of mental illness. My mental health had been getting steadily worse over the years. I trust the person who told me what happened, so I take it as fact. I was drinking with my sister and having a great time. We went to the bathroom and, mid-laugh, I just pounced on her. They said it was an instant switch and that my eyes went black. People dragged me off, but I did not calm down, so they called the police. I am so grateful they advocated for me, and I spent the night in a grippy sock hold instead of in a cell. I have not had a drop since. Story 61. I drank my marriage away. I haven't had a drink in 8 years. Turns out being around my ex-wife drove me to drink. As soon as I was free of her, the urge completely ceased, like someone flipped a switch. Story 62. I realized alcohol has zero benefits for me. It did not make me feel good. I was spending too much money on it and drinking almost daily. What I really wanted was a fun drink to unwind at the end of the day. So I have been making mocktails for myself. Story 63. When the coronavirus disease 2019 pandemic began and bars closed, I took a break from drinking. I have continued, and now it has been more than 5 years. Story 64. A breakup. She did not bring up my drinking habits as a cause, but when I reflected on how it happened, I came to terms with the fact that I had been using alcohol to self-medicate, something I had started to notice but was struggling to fully accept. The breakup pushed me over the edge. I had not historically drunk more than a beer or two alone. It had kind of crept up on me. I had a lot going on in my life, and I have mostly forgiven myself for falling into that trap. It terrified me, so rather than cutting back, I decided that giving up alcohol was the best way to build the life I want. I decided I had had enough and stopped drinking. Alcohol had been a temporary escape but did not make me feel better or fix my problems. No regrets. Story 65. What got me sober at first, and still does, remains a mystery. I don't know why I stopped, but I remember that last drink and how much of a piece of shit I felt. What made me really get sober and start to change my life was a conversation with a friend who has 30 years of sobriety and told me I needed to go to a meeting. I went and my life changed. Story 66. My traumatic experiences in Frankfurt felt like The Walking Dead. Story 67. I did not like the way it felt in my brain when I drank 8 to 10 bourbons and a few vodka tonics, just to stumble down the hallway to the bedroom and pass out. That was not the life I wanted for the years I have left. I am 76. Drinking became an old, boring, and expensive habit. Story 68. It just kind of happened. I stopped going out to bars as I got older. And drinking alone isn't any fun. Story 69. I was diagnosed with a blood disorder that, while not life-threatening, made my life miserable. I was told to stop drinking beer daily and reduce red meat to twice a week. They remove a bag of blood every few weeks and dispose of it. I have not had a drink in slightly more than a year, but I will never completely give up beef. Story 70. My wife divorced me when our daughters were 4 years old and 1 year old. It broke my heart. It was the hardest thing I have done. I have been sober for 14 years. I have a new wife and a great relationship with my daughters. Story 71. My dad has a minibar at home. When I was 18 in France, I used to take a shot of dry gin or whiskey. It tasted like heaven. My parents found out and scared me. Apparently those drinks are very dangerous for my body. I also used to drink wine every day. Later, I did something stupid as a way to cope. Story 72. I reached a point where I hated using because it no longer made me feel good. It was still hard to quit, but I finally did and went through a recovery program. It will be 6 years on March 23, 2026. When you have finally had enough, you will do it. I am rooting for you. Story 73. I vomit most of the time, even after drinking only 3 beers. I think my psychiatric medications are causing this. Story 74. I have always been sober and felt bad when I saw people destroying their lives by using drugs. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.